zu einem Fireside-Chat-Talk mit einem Mann, der seinen 30. Geburtstag definitiv anders gefeiert hat als viele von uns, oder zumindest als ich. Sam Bankman-Fried hat Anfang März mit unterschiedlichen TV-Teams gesprochen, denn wenige Wochen zuvor wurde sein 2019 gegründetes Unternehmen auf 32 Milliarden Dollar taxiert. Und zwar handelt es sich dabei um die Kryptobörse FTX. Damit ist sie wertvoller als die Deutsche Bank zum Beispiel. Und das ist ja spannend für ein Unternehmen, das es noch nicht so wahnsinnig lange gibt. FTX ist in Rekordzeit angewachsen. Das Privatvermögen von Sam wird auf 24 Milliarden Dollar geschätzt. Mehr als 1 Million Nutzer hat er. Durchschnittliches Handelsvolumen täglich von 10 Milliarden US-Dollar. Der absolute Wahnsinn. Es gibt viele, mehr als 60 prominente Geldgeber, die das Ganze nach vorne gepusht haben. Und wir sind natürlich gespannt, was damit jetzt passiert. Und wir haben eine großartige Journalistin da, die mit Sam jetzt gemeinsam sprechen wird. Wir freuen uns über Amy O Brien. There she is. Hi, Amy.
Hello.
I can see Sam, so you will be able to talk to him.
Okay.
Have a great time. Thank
Thanks
you
very
so
much.
much.
Brilliant. Sam is here. Great. So I've been asked to do a bit of an intro quickly. Sam Bankman-Fried is the founder and CEO of crypto exchange FTX, which he launched in 2019 and has since expanded into one of the world's largest digital asset exchanges. In January this year, FTX was valued at $32 billion when it announced a new Series C funding round, making Sam, of course, a nice young crypto billionaire. So, without further ado, welcoming Sam to our big screen on Zoom. Hey.
Having me.
Hi, Sam. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Amazing. Brilliant. So, hi, Sam. I would say pleasure to meet you, but I'm not sure how much this counts. It's quite ironic that we're doing it like this after the couple of years we've had. But thank you very much for joining us here today. I mean, what an excellent time to have you here. I think it would just be brilliant if we could dive straight in to talking about what on earth is happening in crypto right now. So, the recent slowdown, the slumps we've seen in the last week. Let's start generally, but I'm interested in what you think this means for the crypto industry in general to start off with. Is this different from the slumps that we've seen before?
I think it's not that different from what we've seen before. You know, we've been through a number of different ups and downs in the industry. We were through, moves that were about this big in percent space in March 2020. In April 2021, and frankly over the back half of 2018 as well. So this isn't a super new phenomena, and I think in many ways its impact is probably going to look something like what the other ones did, where the space is relatively robust to it, but there's a real drawdown in funding available, in bullishness, over the space for the next few months to years.
Okay, cool. And I guess I'm quite interested in also what it means for FTX. Like, how have you been sort of preparing your company? Perhaps how have you been talking to your employees? And more to the point, how have you been communicating with people using your customers?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, one thing that is, fortunate, I guess, for us about our business is that, in many ways, it's not that difficult for us to prepare for something like this. And what I mean by that is, we're in a fortunate place as a business to be, profitable right now. We have been since pretty early on, which is true of shockingly few tech companies nowadays. And if you look at the places where, people are feeling a lot of pain, it's companies that were not profitable, but were able to raise as much funding as they needed very cheaply. And now all of a sudden, as that funding dries up, people start to ask hard questions about what the future of their business is going to be and how they're going to finance it. For our customers, obviously, this was, not a great week for a lot of them. That's true, again, for people across tech, not just in crypto. But, there's still on average way up over the last, year, for instance, or a few years. And so, in a lot of ways, this isn't something totally new for them. This is something that they are, mostly prepared for. So, all things considered, I think that this has been, orderly as much as something like this could be orderly for a number of our customers.
Okay, really interesting to hear how you're prepping that. And I guess that sort of talking of volatility then, I'm interested in speaking to you a bit about stock trading. So I saw that earlier this month you'd got quite a sizable stake, I think 7.6% in Robinhood. At the same time, you talked about how you want to integrate stock trading into FTX. So I'm wondering how these two moves fit together and what the game plan is there.
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I don't think that they're originally intended to be have that much to do with each other in some sense. When we're looking at adding stock trading to FTX, the core thing is that many of our users, in addition to trading cryptocurrencies, they also trade stocks, and they want a platform where they can do both. This is obviously something that Robinhood has discovered as well. We're not the first people to realize that, but it means that we want to be able to offer both in a sort of seamless way in an integrated platform. We've been pushing forward towards that for a while, and we're pretty excited to finally mostly be there, and optimistic that over the next a month or so, we're going to be able to actually go live for all of our users with that. So that's pretty exciting. And I think it'll be big for the platform. On Robinhood's side, it's down a lot in share price from its peak. To the point where, especially given the cash it had on hand, we felt like it made it an attractive investment. Felt like it has a lot of upside, much more upside than downside left. And that was the core of the thesis. Although obviously, we're always excited to have conversation about ways that we can work together with other companies, ways that we can work on products together that are worth more than than just the sum of the parts.
We shall wait and see then, I guess. And moving back to FTX then, in terms of when you were building FTX, looking at FTX now, I'm interested in the average customer. Who is actually using FTX? And who did you originally have in mind when you launched in 2019? Has your average customer changed from 2019 until now with COVID in between? Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, so historically, our average customer has been a power user, much more so than most platforms. They've been users who are spending hours per day in the crypto ecosystem. More than 90% of our volume comes from users trading at least hundreds of thousands of dollars per day of volume. And so, most of this is not coming from sort of long tail of small users. Most of this really is coming from the larger users. That's been true historically. It's still true today. How have things changed? I think that we have obviously grown a lot, and I think that we have grown a little bit beyond that. It is still the case that our average user is very much a power user, but I think that's true to a less extreme extent today than it once was. I think that we have grown out laterally a fair bit, and excited to hopefully keep doing that over the next couple of years. But I think that a big part of that is going to be being able to offer a really comprehensive retail product suite, and I think that the stocks are a big piece of that, of being able to create a sort of really compelling, comprehensive retail financial application, in addition to the in addition to having the sort of professional user experience that we've specialized in historically.
Cool. I'm actually going to move us back to talking a little bit more about the market, because I'm sure that's what a lot of people want to hear. The other day, you told the FT a bit about Bitcoin. You said that it has no future as a payments network because of various structural issues. So I was interested in what those structural issues are. Can you explain to me a bit about your doubts and a bit about the shortcomings of Bitcoin?
Totally. And to be clear here, I think the Bitcoin network that blockchain itself is not going to be used as a mass payments network. The reason is that that network has, single double-digit transactions per second. You'd need to look at millions of transactions per second eventually if you wanted to support a Bitcoin, a payments network for the whole world, and probably tens of thousands of transactions a second to support a payment network with significant adoption. And so it's just a raw TPS question. That being said, while I don't think that the network is going to be used as a core payments network, you could absolutely still see the token Bitcoin being used in payments, because among other things, you can transport it on Lightning, on layer 2s, on other networks, in order to take the same asset but be able to move it on more scaling networks, and have the Bitcoin network used mostly as value lock-in as opposed to as throughput and payments. Or you could see just other tokens on other networks evolving as the main payments thing. And so the basic things that it's not going to be the core Bitcoin proof of work blockchain. I think that supporting mass payments infrastructure, but cryptocurrencies absolutely could, and with Lightning and other things, Bitcoin itself the token could end up being a big part of that.
Cool, that's cleared things up a bit. And I guess whilst we're speaking about other players then, I really wanted to ask you about Coinbase and its quarterly results the other day. It sparked some anxiety when it spoke about this new risk factor, essentially, warning that customers could potentially lose all their assets in the case of Coinbase going bankrupt. So I was interested in, A, what you think about that, B, asking you if it's the same with FTX, and C, what you think this means for people's, general confidence in the sector.
So I haven't dug deep into exactly what they said, and so caveating this with maybe it says something other than what I would be expecting here. But in a basic sense, I think that what it was saying was not any different from what's true of every company. Mostly, which is that if they have customer assets and somehow they don't just lose their corporate assets, but they get hacked and lose literally all of their assets, or no assets left. And there are none left to return to anyone. There may have been something about the about the sort of rank ordering of seniority of assets, and to that extent, we do treat customer assets as the most important and as the most senior, effectively, on FTX, and so as the ones that we will pay back at all costs ahead of anything corporate. And so to the extent that there's making a statement about that, that may be somewhat Coinbase specific, but to the extent it was just making the statement that if there are no assets left, then there are no assets left. That's just true of everything, crypto or not. And I think more than anything else, it says something about the shakiness of the market right now, how basically how much attention that got, and how much fear that induced, because my guess is that it wasn't anything super new, and that this was in decent part just people, the market is really scared right now. It's terrified. We're seeing that across a lot of dimensions, and we're seeing that in crypto, but also outside of crypto. I don't think this is a crypto specific thing. We've seen stocks take a really big beating over the last few months, and so to a large extent, I think this is just the market is generally scared. It's generally spooked, generally driven by increased monetary policy tightness anticipated coming up, and so. And everywhere, I think people are looking for excuses to sell and needing a lot of sort of convincing to buy.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I guess then moving to sort of more safe assets, I wanted to talk a bit about your belief in effective altruism. I was fascinated by this, obviously had to ask you, your plan to give away 99% of your earnings. I'm really interested in how this actually works. How do you liquidate it, for example? Presumably a lot of it's tied up with FTX and FTX tokens. So yeah, I was wondering what the plan is there and how you actually would make that work.
Totally. And the answer here is that it's going to have to happen over time because, as you said, I might have some amount of wealth like mark to market, but most of that is not liquid today. Most of that is tied up in equity, and so really what you mean is that as it does, as it becomes liquid, I'm going to be looking into what I can do with it. And to be clear, this isn't going to happen at the to the detriment of the companies, right? Like right now, it's important that the companies do have capital, especially in this market condition, to be able to operate aggressively, to be able to expand. And I'm excited for that. And I think that's gonna be what sort of grows the long run value and wealth. But I think to the extent that I do end up ultimately getting liquidity from them, which obviously I'm optimistic will happen eventually. That rather than spending that personally, I'm looking to donate almost all of what I get from that. And some of it has started already. Like I do, we are intending to give away north of 100 million. I think we've already given north of 100 million this year. But I expect that number to ramp up over time as as things do become more liquid.
Brilliant. Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, but just to clarify, how much have you donated so far?
I think we've given away about $100 million this year so far.
Cool, it's a good start, okay, so looking ahead then, I wanted to ask you what the future looks like for FTX. What will FTX look like in 5 years? What will the entire crypto industry look like in 5 years? Will we be laughing at the current slump?
So obviously, I hope that this will look like not that much. And for what it's worth, if you look on a graph of Bitcoin price right now at the March 2020 slump because of COVID, you can barely see it. It really does. You have to kind of really stare at it. Oh, I bet that's March 2020. At the time, it felt like the world was falling down. At the time, the industry was freaking out there. And this, again, it's not crypto specific, everywhere, people felt like the world was ending. And so I'm optimistic that that's going to be the case for the industry in general. And when you look at, FTX in particular, where do I hope it is? Well, one thing, obviously, and something that, I've been spending a lot of time recently on is growing out the US regulated product suite. Being able to offer in the United States, the same set of products that we offer everywhere else. And so that's something that I'm pretty excited about. Outside of that, really excited to be able to grow out the consumer product, being able to grow out, our stock offering obviously soon, and trying to grow to a point where it is a general comprehensive consumer financial product that offers equitable access, that offers clean, safe access, where people can manage their finances directly and have the kind of control over them that they have not had before. And so I think that's a big eventual goal of ours on the consumer side. And then on the professional side, just being able to offer a global, really robust, really powerful suite of liquidity in crypto, potentially in other classes, and being able to do that in a way where, again, you have direct equitable access, but also a powerful, robust risk system that can withstand things like what we've seen over the last few days. So that's where I'm hoping we're going to get to. I'm optimistic we will. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens in the end. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Exciting. I guess, last fun question I had. I was just curious how it feels to be barely 30 and a multi-billionaire.
It's most days it doesn't feel like much. Most days it is what it is, and I just sort of ignore it and go on with my life. But it's really cool to be able to have real impact in the world. It's cool to be able to have substantial sized impact, to be able to look at places where I think there's a lot we could be doing to shore up our future, like pandemic preparedness, and then actually be able to move in and do something there. And so that's been that's been really rewarding. But most days I wake up and go to work, so it feels like normal.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sam. Maybe one day we'll meet in person, but thanks for zooming in with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam Bankman-Fried. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.
So, Amy and also the expert panel, what was your impression from this talk?
Obviously quite fascinating, I think. I founded my business too in 2019. It's nowhere near that size. So I have a lot of respect, obviously, for it. But I know that Christian actually had a few thoughts as well on the topic.
Yeah, of course, this is impressive how he's scaling up this business. But it would be interesting to know the sense or the intention behind some products, such like the stock tokens. This is something I'm not getting right now. Where is the sense if it's not speculation? Because the token aren't backed by a blockchain of the company. It's not the shareholder register. It's just something top level. It's a derivative. So I think it may be a first step to come to digital owner rights and digital shareholding, but there is a long way to go, and I can't estimate if he is willing to go this way, because there's also a regulation issue. What I think is really interesting is that he's got opinion trading or prediction markets on the app too, and you can trade Trump 2024 or Bolsonaro, so it's not too much of a choice. But those prediction markets are really interesting because they are more exact than some polls before political elections. And it would be nice to know if he would like to go forward in this direction.
So, Amy, what was your takeaways?
I mean, it's just really interesting speaking to people about what's happening in the crypto market in general, and like all the different answers and the evasive answers that we get, but also the hope. But I think the most fascinating thing for me about Sam as an entrepreneur is the effective altruism thing, because that is not something that we see very often, certainly not among many of the fintech founders I interview. So it was really, really interesting to ask him a bit more about that. Yeah, I don't know if you guys had any other really interesting takeaways from what he said.
So I couldn't understand every word he was saying, unfortunately.
It's hard on stage, yeah.
But the one topic I would have loved to learn a bit more about is his view on how regulation in this arena is changing. Because we talked in the last panel a lot about customer trust and whether customers continue to see financial institutions as the ones to give their money to compared to lending money from. I mean, we are talking here about life savings of many people, and I think the regulator is very interested in what's happening here. I think the question is still open. What will happen there in the next 2-3 years? And that's, to me, is a big open question also for his business model in the future.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much, and a big applause for Amy from Sifted.
Thank you.
So, wir kommen jetzt zum vorletzten Talk, einem Fireside-Chat, auf den ich mich schon seit Wochen freue, weil es ein ganz besonderes Gespräch ist.